In early summer of 1843, there was an attempt to arrest Joseph Smith and drag him back to Missouri to be assassinated. This attempt was foiled, as I discussed in a previous video. Then we had the revelation, plurality of wives, and celestial marriage. After all of this, the general hostility in the area of Nauvoo, in Hancock County, Illinois especially, the general hostility is increasing. Missouri is still sending people to try and drag Joseph Smith back to Missouri. There are more attempts to get writs of arrest for him. These are all failing, but there are those who are just kind of roving around the countryside hoping to get him and drag him back. During this time, they're trying to get others in the church as well. And it is at this time that we have the kidnapping of the Averys. This is a family very close to Joseph Smith. They were living outside Nauvoo on a farm, and they are taken by a number of Missouri thugs. Now, King Follett, who is now Constable Follett of the Hancock County, he goes to Carthage and arrests a John Elliott, who was involved in the kidnapping. He requests the assistance of the Nauvoo Legion, who sends out a contingent to arrest a Levi Williams, who is also a commander in the Illinois militia, and he raises his own militia at Warsaw to resist arrest. And this is a gathering. He does have some militia of Illinois. He also has mobs from Missouri joining him, and we get this whole tension going on. Eventually, the Averys are released, but this is just a building escalation of tensions between the saints and those around them. Especially, remember, it is largely Missouri that is still trying to take Joseph Smith and kill him. There are those in Illinois who are helping, but most of Illinois are not against the saints. It is still largely Missouri that is the instigator behind all of this. During all of these hostilities, Joseph Smith gets a letter from Governor Ford, in which Governor Ford admits that he has never looked at any of the affidavits, any of the evidence, nothing that has been sent him by the saints or the mob. He hadn't looked at anything. He's basically saying, I'm ignoring it all, hoping it goes away. Because of this, Joseph Smith, once again, for the last time, sends petitions to the federal government for relief. And he's not just sending it to Congress in Washington. He also sends letters of appeal to a number of states. He sends it to Vermont, I believe Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, a lot of the New England states. He sends them letters and he asks the state legislatures to pressure the federal government into helping the saints. And this is the last time. This is basically saying, this is your last chance. Now, he did send out affidavits and petitions in 1841, and he did say that if you don't redress the grievances, the government's going to be judged for it. And they will be, but he sends these petitions for the last time. God is giving the federal government one final opportunity. God is very merciful. He said it was the last thing. He said if you don't redress the saints, you're going to get judged. And he's saying, okay, the judgment's got to come, but we'll give you one last chance. And in the midst of all of this is the fun part. In northern Illinois, there's a group of saints who see in the sky celestial signs. And it's described as a ball of light streaks across the sky, leaving a tail that from visual looked to be about 40 feet long, which means it would have been a lot longer because it was way up in the sky, but it looked to be about 40 feet long. It streaks out one line and then sits there for about a minute. And then it reshapes itself into an 8, stays as an 8 for about a minute, reshapes itself into a 6, remains there for about a minute, and then reshapes itself into a 0 and remains as a 0 for about 3 minutes before disappearing. Now you will note, 1860, 1860, the year that the Civil War starts. And this sign is given at the same time that Joseph Smith is sending the final petitions to the federal government. Now, in his history, Joseph Smith does not state what this means. But I think that it's fairly obvious. God was telling the people, if you don't fix this problem, if you don't do justice to my saints, that in 1860 the judgment of God is going to come. All this happens in the last half of the year 1843. In January of 1844, there are difficulties with William Law. He is a member of the First Presidency, and he is accusing Joseph Smith of conspiring with the police force of Nauvoo to have him assassinated. They have a big trial, not a trial, they have a hearing before the city council. They call witnesses. The people that William Law says he heard this from all deny it, and they call in all of the police force. Now, because of all the strain and tensions that have been building, the police force has been doubled, I think, 3 times in Nauvoo. I think by January it's only been doubled twice. It's going to be doubled again, I think, in March. But all the policemen come in and they testify that there was no conspiracy. The claim was that Joseph Smith gave them all a public oath and then gave them all a private oath, kind of as a raising his own personal army, and they all deny it. William Law reconciles with Joseph Smith, at least for now. There is again a difficulty with Francis Higbee, although in Joseph Smith's history we do not get the details of this, but we are told that they also eventually reconcile in the month of January. This is all happening in January. We also get in the latter part of January reply from the federal government denying the petition, saying they will not do anything. So on January 29th, Joseph Smith declares his candidacy for president. And I love his, I don't know if you can call it a slogan, but I like what he wrote. We need a president of the United States and not a president of the Whigs or a president of the Democrats. I like that. We don't need a president who represents a certain political party, but who represents the country, the nation as a whole. We can't be divided, we shouldn't be divided by party lines. He also, with the help of a number of church leaders and friends, they draft a pamphlet titled Views of the Powers and Policy of the Government of the United States. And this is made public. It is published primarily first in Nauvoo, although many copies are then taken by his representatives to other states. So Sidney Rigdon, I believe, is sent east. William Clayton is sent south. Various men are sent out with these pamphlets to go and promote Joseph Smith as president. This isn't just he saying, oh, I should run for president. He has a full presidential campaign going. He is sending people out. When Missouri gets wind of this, they become terrified, because they know if Joseph Smith is elected, then he will put down the evil that is being done in Missouri. Even if he's not elected, if he can get enough public support, Missouri is under threat. The only reason the federal government hasn't done anything yet is because it is not politically expedient. If they went into it, they feared that the people would turn against them, they would not be elected. That is why they are refusing to do anything. But if Joseph Smith can bring enough public attention, can get enough people to see what's going on, Missouri will be in trouble. To this end, Joseph Smith has started a full campaign. Flyers are sent out, pamphlets are printed and sent out, and he tells the apostles and others of his close association, the members of his campaign, to go out and organize conferences among all the saints throughout all the United States. Organize conferences of saints, and he will travel the country on the campaign trail, meeting with the saints, announcing his candidacy and all this. So he is in a full campaign mode. Now, while he is on the campaign trail, we must also remember that as early as 1840, maybe 1841, he had given a prophecy that the saints would settle in the Rocky Mountains, that they would go there and be established as a great people. And he has been planning for it. He has been preparing for this eventuality. He knows the saints will not be remaining in Nauvoo very long. Now, in his history that he wrote based on his journals, we don't get a lot about this prophecy, but in other sources there is great detail to prophecy. He not only prophesied they would go to the mountains, he apparently drew a map about the route they would take, which would include the location of winter quarters where they would spend the winter after leaving Nauvoo. And for the past 4 or 5 years, he has been preparing for the western migration. In 1844, they do form what is called the General Council, also known as the Council of 50, and its primary purpose is to organize a migration of the saints to a land that is not subject to any earthly kingdom. That they can set themselves up their own civil government, still on the principles of the Constitution of the United States, but out of the reach of the mobs. Now, the Council of 50 is not just members of the church. It is primarily, but among the 50 or so that originally formed this council, it's like 40 of them are members of the church and about 10 are not members. But they are men who see the injustice of what's going on and what's being done to the members, and they agree with setting up a new civil government. Again, still based on the principles of the Constitution. Now, at this time, Joseph Smith also instructs the 12 apostles to send expeditionary groups out west. He tells them, go to Oregon, go to California, go all over, find us a place where we can go and we can settle as a people. Now, these expeditionary forces don't actually get out there until after Joseph Smith is dead, not until after the saints actually leave Nauvoo. Things keep delaying it, but he's trying to get things settled. Now, there are some things known about the West at this time. The West it's a great exotic land, and very little detail is known, but there are some things known, and they have heard the stories of the Great Salt Lake Basin. This lake had been discovered sometime earlier by Jim Bridger, the great frontiersman. And so stories had been spread about the Salt Lake Basin. And even though they hadn't sent any men out to scout the area and locate it, this is where Joseph Smith was telling him to go. And by about a week before his death, he has drawn out a map. He has shown them the route they will take. This is where this Salt Lake Basin is. This is where you're going to go. And the saints actually follow this map when they do migrate west. Brigham Young has a copy, and he gives a copy to the Mormon battalion when they break off from the main group so that they can find their way to the Salt Lake Basin. It's all based on maps drawn by Joseph Smith, either drawn by him or dictated by him to scribes who would draw it out. However, at this time there's also Lyman White, who advocates for going to Texas, and George Miller, who was a bishop at the time, he's advocating to go to Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin is where they had gone to get lumber for the temple, and this was on Black River in the Pineries. And Joseph Smith actually states that both would be good places to kind of have stakes of Zion, gathering places for the saints, but he is focused on the Rocky Mountains. Lyman White wants to go to Texas. He thinks it's a great land. A lot of German settlers are going to Texas who are opposed to slavery and are generally religiously tolerant. And so he thinks to be a good place to settle among these Germans. But Orson Hyde is not as confident and cautions that many Missourians are also settling, both in Texas and in Oregon. And so the church should be hesitant to move into these areas because of that. Joseph Smith issues another prophecy in which he says, in 5 years, the saints will be out of reach of their enemies. Within 5 years, they will be secure in a place where they can grow, where they can build up their own society without the fear of enemies persecuting them. Now, this is stated in 1844. The saints first entered the Salt Lake Valley, the first saints, in 1847. By 1849, they are fairly well established. They're still struggling, but they're fairly well established in the Salt Lake Valley, so this prophecy does come to pass. But this is all going on so that when, or just immediately before Joseph Smith is arrested and assassinated, he actually starts on his journey out west, which we will talk about in the next video. Now, while all these struggles and tensions are rising in Nauvoo, and Joseph Smith is beginning his presidential campaign, many good things are happening in the church, many great things, but they're happening outside of Nauvoo. And this is the mission of the 12 apostles. They have been going throughout the eastern states and England preaching the gospel. Now, in the eastern states, this means New England, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, this area. These are the eastern states. They have fair success. They have many baptisms. They are organizing many congregations. But it's in the foreign lands that we get the greatest events happening. In 1843, there was a large conference in England, but more importantly, he presents Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, each with a copy of the Book of Mormon, specially printed for the King and Queen. Prince Albert, not King Albert. In addition, the Russian mission is open. Men are called, sent to Russia. They are also sent to the South Pacific, Hawaii, all that area, Indonesia. So the mission fields are expanding. The gospel is spreading throughout the world, all at the time that these trials are happening in Nauvoo. Joseph Smith is on the campaign for about 3 months. He declared his campaign on the 29th of January. February, March, April, May, about 4 months he's campaigning. During this time, William and Wilson Law apostatize and leave the church, as well as Francis Higbee and most of the Higbee family. These men, along with a few others, decide to write an expose exposing Joseph Smith. Now, one of the things that they have a complaint about is the practice of plural marriage. But a lot of the information they have received about this practice has come from men like John C. Bennett, and so they have false information. But on June 7th, they establish a newspaper in Nauvoo, which they call the Expositor, the Nauvoo Expositor, and they print the first edition. This is June 7th. The Laws, the Higbees, the Fosters, and a few others are the proprietors who are running this and writing the paper. On June 10th, the City Council meets and they declare the Expositor to be a libelous nuisance, meaning they're not just saying they're annoyed at it, but that it is printing lies. It is libelous. And in order to facilitate justice, and today you might sue somebody for a libelous publication. Back then, if it was declared to be libelous, then it was shut down. And so the City Council orders the destruction of the printing press. Not the building, just the press. And Joseph Smith, as the mayor, is given this order from the City Council. It does not come from Joseph Smith, it comes from the City Council. So Joseph Smith, as mayor, then passes the order to the City Marshal, who then enlists the Nauvoo Legion to assist in carrying out this order. It is all done very orderly and according to the lawful order of the city. They take the printing press, they take the paper, they take the ink, they take it all out into the street, break it up, burn it, dump the ink down the drain, water drain on the side of the street. No damage to the building itself, no personal harm, no riots, just a few law enforcement officers carrying out a lawful order from the city. Compare this to the destruction of the printing press in Independence, when a mob stormed the building, tarred and feathered the men, broke not only the printing press and the papers, but windows, doing damage to the building, doing damage to the people, without any lawful order, without any justification. But this is the state of things in early June as we move into Joseph Smith's last 3 weeks.